Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Centra's first webinar. I am joined today by my 5 cybersecurity gurus. They will be introducing themselves shortly. So the theme of today's webinar is how can startups scale securely and avoid costly mistakes. So the reason we put this webinar together was we're speaking with CEOs pretty much every day, and we noticed that there was a common theme of questions coming out of these mainly startups. So we thought we'd put something together in the hope to provide you with some insight and some actionable takeaways. What we did is we kind of collated all of these questions and we put them into 4 different categories. So the categories that we'll be covering today are the startup mindset and cybersecurity awareness, budget and resource constraints, team and resourcing, and strategy and best practices. So before we jump into the questions, let's do some quick introductions. So I'm David. I'm the founder of Centra. My background, 22 plus years in the recruitment space. The last 4 years of that, I've been helping tech companies scale into new countries. At that point, during the last few years, I noticed there was a gap within tech startups in terms of their cybersecurity teams and strategy. So I put Centra together to try and solve that problem. So we help tech startups scale in a secure way. We do that in 3 different ways. So we help uncover hidden risks through cybersecurity assessments. We also help build the right team. So we connect you with the best cybersecurity talent, and we keep you investor ready with a roadmap to scale securely. So that's me. Who is next? Steve, you're next on my screen. So let's go with you.
Hi, David. Good afternoon. I'm Stephen O'Sullivan. I'm one of the partners at Centra. I've got over 25 years experience in all types of cybersecurity or information security. Previously been a CISO, head of cybersecurity, IT and OT, financial sector, working with startups as well. Currently, my interests are in AI security and governance. Quantum security is coming along quite nicely, and basically helping new organizations start to scale securely and put in place the essential cybersecurity actions they need. That's me.
Good man. Furkan?
Yeah, thanks, David. Hi, my name is Furkan Hashmi, and I'm one of the partners of Centra, working with David and Steven and Peter. I have significant experience in improving security posture for public and private companies, covering from like mid-sized to large-size organizations. And my main areas of cybersecurity covers security architecture, transformation, security operations, and governance, risk, and compliance. So thank you.
Good, thank you, mate. Peter?
Hi, I'm also a partner at Centra. My background is that I've worked in security for more than 30 years, both as a subject matter expert and as well as a leader, CISO and equivalent roles. During my career, I've helped organizations protect more than $2 trillion of other people's assets and built teams in banking, finance technology, oil and gas, telecommunications, all of which have worked tirelessly to protect your and my information from people who might want to do harm. The problems of smaller organizations are often forgotten regarding cybersecurity, and it's one of my passions to try and help change that situation. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, gentlemen. Great to have you on board, and you can see why I call them the 3 wise men. Right, should we get going with the questions, guys?
Yeah.
Cool. So the first one, the first category is the startup mindset and cybersecurity awareness. The first question came in from Marcus, a client of mine in the US. His question is, we didn't think too much about cybersecurity early on, but as we scale, it's feeling more critical. What's the biggest risk if we don't focus on it now? Who's going to take this one? Furkan, do you want to kick us off?
Definitely. Thanks, David. So, practically speaking, cybersecurity should be integrated or embedded in the product or platform development as early as possible. And what we have seen with startups and fintechs firms, like they normally miss that boat. But better late than never. Whenever we realize that cybersecurity is a miss, then we need to integrate that from that stage. Now, like if we don't do that, there will be quite a lot of risk. And should there be a successful cyber attack happen on the organization, there will be reputational damages, there will be financial damages, and there will be technical damages. For example, like it depends on the type of attack. I don't want to go too much technical in that, but like there might be a denial of service attack, which will bring the service down for a couple of hours. And there might be a virus based attack which can disrupt the environment. So in terms of risk, reputational, financial, and technical risk, along with that, definitely a data exfiltration risk, which is which is one of the keys. For example, like if the startups, if they are holding customer data or critical information, if that gets leaked out to dark web or available on internet, then it will create a long-term negative impact on the organization. So again, like I will wrap up my thoughts that cybersecurity should be integrated in the initiation or planning phase of the product development for these fintechs or tech startups, if that makes sense.
Yeah, great. Steve, what's your take on that?
So it's the same thing. Cybersecurity should be viewed as business risk, and if you're starting an organization, you want to ensure that you minimize any risk to your business failing or being in breach of any particular regulations as such. So as Furkan was saying, you need to not see cybersecurity as something that can wait. You need to not see it as an IT problem. You need to educate yourself about your particular sector that you're in as a startup and understand the actual regulations and things you need to do to protect your organization. Going back to my first point, you need to see cybersecurity risk as a business risk and business harm that can end your organization before it starts.
Hey, Peter, anything to wrap up?
Yeah, I just want to emphasize that even startups are prime targets for attackers. I have some organizations that I know working in semiconductor supply chain. They're organizations which feel quite small, feel a little bit underneath the radar, but their clients are some of the world's biggest semiconductor manufacturers. What happens is that they could be the weak underbelly for that very large silicon foundry, and there's geopolitical risks associated. So every startup is a way for attackers not just to attack to get value from the startup itself, but from their clients, their partners, and their investors. And our industry is littered with startups that have failed because of ransomware attacks, failed because they've had data breaches of their critical client data. And when that happens, there is no more customer trust. If you think that selling is hard with a perfect product and a perfect reputation, imagine how hard it is without. Additionally, in many markets like Europe, there are now cybersecurity regulations regarding disclosure to government authorities, especially if you're starting to deal with large amounts of personal data or you're busy with critical infrastructure. So all of these things taken together, what my colleagues have said, the risks are that if you don't start as soon as possible, it's going to cost you a lot more to fix later. And if you don't fix it, it may end up costing your entire business.
Well said. Thank you, Peter. Right, Marcus, hopefully that answered that question. The next question here we have is from Jonah. Joan has asked, we have some basic security in place, but I don't know if we're actually covering the right things. What do startups actually miss? Peter, you were kind of in a flow there. Do you want to pick this one up?
Thanks. Well, I can get on my hobby horse. I've seen so many problems with configuration management, and especially nowadays with cloud configuration management. People assume that you can just turn on services and they're set up automatically to be secure. That's not true. You can configure them to be insecure or secure. Your architecture, the way that all of the little Lego blocks fit together, can be secure or can be insecure. It costs a little bit more thought and effort to make it secure. And it's very easy for small mistakes to lead to actually your platform being insecure. So my advice to everyone is, if you don't have runbooks and checklists for your configuration management, this is necessary as your very first step. If you're not being consistent, you don't know why consistency is necessary, you're open to one single incorrect click or a single line in a YAML file that will end up taking down your platform. So use runbooks and checklists, use internal standards in a little wiki or a Notion page, and start using the tools that your cloud providers can provide you to actually secure your configs. This will save you a great deal of time and effort later.
Right. Steve, I saw you nodding your head there. Do you want to add anything?
Yeah, so as Peter said, when you start up an organization and you've got an online presence, you've got a portal, you're using cloud services, as Peter has said, you've got people, you've got your process in place in some way or the other, and you've got regulations impinging on you. But above all, as soon as you go online and start to do transaction online, you are facing inherent risk. You have the inherent risk of you operating as a business online needs to be protected. So my advice would be moving more towards a GRC, governance, risk and compliance side. You need to understand the sector you're working in. You need to understand the particular risk that can affect your particular sector. You need to appraise yourself of the regulations, be they DORA, NIS2, there's many in the financial section, OT sector as well. So understand the ecosystem that you operate in, understand that security is not baked in from the start, and really see security as a triad of your people, your process, and your technology stack. And above all, try to take the small steps first of all by doing some assessments yourself, or by bringing in an external person such as those provided by Centra to help you walk you through those initial steps.
Right. Furkan, anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, sure, David. So first of all, like basic security hygiene or basic security controls are good to have. For example, regular operating system and platform patching, security updates, antivirus, anti-malware system. I think like all organizations, fintechs, startups, all organizations have these controls in place. But on the other hand, I think some of the or one of the most important control that mostly organizations miss is the access control, the role-based access control part, least privilege part. For example, like we have seen in a lot of cases in small and mid-sized organizations that they do not manage the access control, the user provisioning part properly. Sometimes users, they leave the organization, they change the department, but their responsibilities or their privileges remain the same, which creates a big risk. In case of a user who is departing from the organization, and because of the nature of tech startups, the way they are working, in most of the cases, they do not disable the account. And let's suppose like if if that account gets compromised, if it has escalated permissions or privileges in place, that can be used for destruction or for data exfiltration type of attacks. So role-based access control and least privilege model is something which is quite easy to deploy, especially for small size organizations, and it's quite critical. It's one of the critical controls for the organization as well. So that's my take. Yeah.
Right, Peter, was there something else you wanted to?
Yeah, I guess the last thing that maybe most startups actually miss, they don't have an incident response plan. It's one of the cheapest things you can do to actually just think a little bit about if things start going south, if bad people start accessing your systems in an unauthorized way, if you start losing control of your data and systems, what are you going to do? Just having that discussion at around a table with the key stakeholders in your organization can be the difference between survival and destruction of your business and all of the hard work that everyone has put into it. Sometimes it's so simple as saying, do we have a copy of our financial data outside of our business environment? So that if worst comes to worst, we need a bridging loan from a bank to cover our exceptional expenses, we can actually provide that rather than maybe having everything ransomware and having the business actually end. You may have cyber insurance, but if you cannot bridge loan until that's available, you're going to be in trouble. So run a little incident simulation, build the tiniest plan, make sure that you know who in your organization or outside of your organization is available to help.
So to make that as practical as we can for the listeners, is there a template that we could guide them to? Or is there, are there platforms out there that can help with this?
Absolutely. That actually there are international standards around incident response. The US NIST organization has actually published some advisories. The internet is actually full of incident response plans. You can modify these to your heart's content. Actually, I've seen them as Notion templates. So they're possibly already available in your collaboration tools, but you need to make them yours. You need to run through them and you need to make sure that people are familiar with them, because those 2 hours of preparation could make millions of pounds of difference for your organization in the end.
Agree. Right. Next question. We're now moving on to a new category. This is budget and resource constraints. So Terence has messaged us in asking, we're already stretched thin. How do we make security a priority without blowing our budget? Furkan.
Yeah, thanks, David. I understand, and we understand that for technology or like for small size organizations, cybersecurity is not their their business. They are not building a cybersecurity platform or product. So cybersecurity might not be their top priority. But again, like we can have some basic controls in place, as I mentioned earlier. For example, security hygiene practices, including patching, operating system updates, and program updates, platform updates, security updates, antivirus signatures, and so on. Along with that, we know like their budget is tight and they cannot hire like extravagant security controls or security resourcing. But there are various tools that are available free of charge, as Peter mentioned in answer to the last question, that for example, like most of the organizations, they are like, especially startups, they deploy their entire technology environment in cloud. And all leading cloud providers, they have native security controls in place. For example, multi-factor authentication. That's a no-brainer. Wherever we can deploy or apply multi-factor authentication, we should do that. And it's a free of charge, or like it comes literally with nominal cost. Again, depends on the cloud provider. Along with that, like the logging and monitoring part, that can be enabled straight away for the assets. I understand like we might have too many assets within the organization, but again, like we need to identify the crown jewels within the organization and then at least enable logging and monitoring for those assets, which can feed information into the security alerting system. That's again available with nominal cost or free of charge with these cloud providers. So at least should there be a malicious activity or any abnormal behavior identified, then then it will generate an alert, and then IT team can look into that straight away. That can I cannot guarantee that that will that will stop the attack or malicious activity, but it can literally this can help them contain the the attack or the incident. So again, so these free of charge or with minimal cost tools that can be utilized to strengthen the cybersecurity posture, while they keep themselves with on the thin budget, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so it sounds like what you're saying there is it's less about the expensive technology, and it's more about creating good sort of habits. Peter, do you want to sort of pick it up from there?
You've now got me on a roll. I'd like to actually talk about habits, because at least in my experience, having the right people doing the right things, having them know what to do, having them practice what they have to do, understand what they have to do, is actually the key differentiator in having a secure platform and a secure business. So at a couple of the startups I've worked at, we worked really, really hard to make sure that everyone, not just the software engineers, knew about security. They were extremely paranoid about clicking phishing links, so links in emails that seemed too good to be true. They were very practiced in knowing not to read and respond to emails when they're otherwise distracted, like in meetings, because then you're far less capable of being able to quickly evaluate correctly whether this is phishing or not. As well as that, getting software engineers to actually reflectively think about threats as they're developing software. This costs less than 1,000th of the cost in time and money of actually remediating the problem later. So it's not about very expensive tool chains. It's not about making sure that you've got the most whiz-bangy software or services running in your platform. It really is about the right people making the right decisions. And that is about habits. It's about people actually practicing good practice.
Steve, it's not like you to sit there for so long quiet. Did you want to
add
anything?
We all know that technology doesn't bring good cybersecurity alone. And Furkan was saying quite rightly that if you're a startup, you most likely have a cloud service provider that's providing all of your services, and it's a shared responsibility model that's in place. They will provide some security, and you will provide the additional security depending on which type of cloud service package you've got. The people in the process is having, just go what Peter was saying, working as quickly as possible to have a nominated person. In some organizations, I've seen a security champion in place. That's a person who may be responsible with a small r for filtering and bringing about training to the team members. There are many, just going back to the incident response aspect that Peter talked about, there are many free resources from the UK National Cybersecurity Centre for the Information Commissioner's Office that you can get. So Google is very, very useful. I would recommend you go to the more official sites. And even your cloud service provider may have a well-architected framework in place. So you can even get security incident response plans and templates from them. You can also look at doing very, very low hanging fruit. The first startups might want to do cyber essentials, where you do a self-questionnaire and do a tick box exercise, followed by Cyber Essentials Plus, where you have an external penetration test done to see if there's any weaknesses that are apparent from the outside. So there's a number of steps that does not involve spending a fortune. It involves putting some processes in place. It involves having good leadership in place that is committed to that message. If you're an organization with 25 people or less, which is many new startups are, you need to really take those steps and flow it from the top down, and to basically start embedding cybersecurity practices into the organization, and it spans all sorts of areas, from the technical side to the governance, risk and compliance side, to the legal side, to the authentication of the user side, to the process side, to what do we do within hack side and the ransomware side. But information is out there that is free of charge, and they can help you shape that. So again, I go back to understand your particular sector, start to look at the recommendations that cause the most concern for your sector, and then start to look at bodies like the NCSC and the ITO and other official ones that can provide those guidance literally free of charge.
Right. Peter, look like you're about to say something.
Oh, I guess all of what we've been talking about is what you have to do, but there's only limited time and resources, right? We're always stretched in smaller organizations. Actually, large organizations have similar kinds of problems. So I guess the one tiny piece of advice I would have is protect what actually matters. You can spend a lot of time and trouble protecting what isn't so important. Make sure you understand what your crown jewels are and what the access to those crown jewels is, and make sure that that's protected. When you only have limited resources, that's what you have to do. Do not keep building up the castle walls. Make sure the gate is secure. Make sure that the gate is locked, right? And that I wouldn't be able to say anything more to what we've talked about here, except that when you have to make choices, make the choice for the most critical assets you have.
Right, guys. Let's move it on. Next category, team and resourcing. Kristen or Kirsten, question is, we don't have a security hire yet. What's the first thing that we should do to make sure we're not exposed? Steve.
Okay, so the first thing you should do, as I've said, really is to, as the leader, as CEO of your organization, it's your responsibility to understand, as Peter was talking about, the crown jewels, which is really the data that may be your own data or your client's data. So understand where those crown jewels are. In terms of not having a team, there will be a time when you will have to have a security hire or bring in an organization such as Centra Cybersecurity to help you. But having that security champion in place, I found, is always helpful. And that really means picking a person within an organization who's open to learning more about cybersecurity and is willing to be the mouthpiece for your organization and to be that team leader to work with you and your team to guide them, maybe once a week or once every couple of weeks, have a little security meeting to understand what's hot and what's not as such. But yeah, basically start small, start with your championing organization, and then build up to bringing in a fractional resource or an external party, such as ones that Central Cyber provide.
Peter, your take?
Oh, well, yeah, I turn on MFA everywhere, right? That's a no-brainer. We've talked about this before. 80% of breaches are avoided if you've got MFA turned on. Remember, not everyone needs access to everything. The smaller the organization, of course, that's true. In the very first days, everyone has access to all of the customer data, all of the source code, maybe your cloud accounts. But it's very, very dangerous to wait to limit access. The longer you wait, the more everyone has access to all of the things, and the harder it is to actually roll that back. So give everyone access only to what they need. Need to know is a key concern, and absolutely, once you're more than 4 or 5 employees, you have to actually do it. I know it's hard. I know it doesn't feel particularly easy, but it will set you up for success in the future.
And to add to that as well, don't share your username and password, which I did to the team earlier, and they told me off. So that's another thing to avoid. Furkan.
Yeah, Thanks, David. So as Steven and Peter mentioned, in addition to that, I would say that we do need to look into security, existing or freely available security controls. For example, logging and monitoring should be enabled, alerting should be enabled, identify crown jewels as early as possible within the product development phase, and secure them with at least baseline controls, let's say antivirus, anti-malware, and so on. And we understand like it's not easy to hire a full-time security person for these activities. So it's better to get an assessment done from a third party like Centra Cyber, as we have the experts in place, so that they can identify what the what the existing controls are, where are the gaps in the existing controls, wherever they require the improvements, or have the mitigation plans in place. And then from there, like they can gradually improve their cybersecurity posture. And again, with that, like with third-party experts, we can have engagement with them on periodic basis, whereby we can advise them, guide them through how to improve their cybersecurity posture on the longer run, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And Peter, did you want to summarize?
Yeah, fundamentally, you already have an existing tech person or tech team. They should already be securing your business well before your first security hire, actually. But part of the challenge is they don't necessarily always feel the mandate, the priority, and sometimes they don't know what it is that they have to do. And especially as Furkan has just mentioned, sometimes you need some help. Get that help to work out what has to be done. If you're just building and not securing in the very early days, you're setting yourself up for many problems in the future. Your own teams can actually put in place most of the basics, most of the security basics, well before that first security hire. But they need to know what to do, and they need your mandate as a senior leader in your organization. You need to be saying, this has to be secure. You need to be making sure that everything you do builds up our business's likelihood of survival in the future. That's my take on it anyway.
Perfect. Right. Next question from Dan, a client of mine in Singapore. I like this question. It's a question that I get asked quite frequently. So we don't have a CTO or CISO in place yet. When do we actually need one? And what risks should we think about in the meantime? Peter, let's go with you again.
Okay, so GDPR was a little while ago now, so some of our listeners probably will just assume that it was in place for all time. I remember the transition into GDPR and data privacy as a real live concern for a lot of businesses. And what I think became very, very clear is that as soon as you're handling customer data, it's already time. You already need to have a security responsible person. If you're dealing with payments, sensitive personal data like health data, or have investors or partners who are asking about security risks and compliance, security is now a business problem, right? It's something that needs to have an owner in your business. Normally, you'll have an initial security hire, or at least someone who has a double-hatted responsibility for this. It's not always easy to find that first security hire. Maybe Stephen, you'd like to jump in and talk a little bit about what you do in that time of thing.
So yeah, in my experience of working in many organisations over many years, and having come from a teaching background also, I always like to have that, and it is an official kind of term, a security champion in place. And Peter said at the start that your organisation should be secure before it goes live. One hopes so. That's not always the case. So we talked about having some tests done to check those sort of things, and also remember that in order for you to be successful going forwards, your clients are going to expect to see you have good cybersecurity practices in place. It may be via a policy, it may be via a certification on your website, it may be via a badge, but they will expect that as well. So you need to start ASAP, having that security champion in place. And it might be, in my experience, you might set someone up for 0.25 FT of a head count. You can say 0.25 of your time per year is going to be building up our cybersecurity, protecting our crown jewels, understanding our cyber posture, ensuring that we take a risk-based approach. And it's something that we haven't really mentioned risk-based approach, but it's an accepted way of doing business now. You need to take a risk-based approach. You need to build out your cybersecurity roadmap for maybe 2 years. You need to do the first things is to get the phishing exercises done, get the in-house training done. That can be done very, very cheaply. And then start to build out your roadmap, start to look at your architecture. Is the security switched on in place with the cloud? Have you got the right people there? Developers need to understand what's important in the cybersecurity world. So pretty much it all starts either by an information security officer that may be the hub of a hub and spoke of a wheel within your organization, or having that fractional security champion within your organization, but having that person also having the trusted advisor that Central Cyber can provide to hold their hand and to lead them through and to build up that program of work and that roadmap to ensure that they've got a good stance and they're not going to be taken down by a ransomware attack before they even get successful.
Right, Furkan.
Yeah, so again, like we have covered some parts of that in previous questions. I would say like the cybersecurity is very important. The more we delay cybersecurity in the process, the more complicated it will be to embed cybersecurity later on, from a resourcing perspective, from operational complexity perspective, and then it will be very, very expensive, and it will require a lot of re-engineering of the platform or product. So in terms of the risk, we understand again that the startup companies, they are small. Cybersecurity is not their priority. They might not have a cybersecurity officer, and this is where Central Cyber can add significant value, whereby we can provide cybersecurity consulting services to them, and then guide their IT team or IT experts through like how they can improve their cybersecurity posture. This will not only reduce their overall cybersecurity risk, but also tick box a lot of other things, including their regulatory and compliance posture, along with cybersecurity posture improvement. Yeah, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Right, last one. Hopefully people are still with us. Last category, strategy and best practices. The last question we have is, have you seen a startup actually get security right from the start, and what did they do differently? Furkan, let's finish off with you, mate.
Yeah, thanks, David. So we have various examples, not so many, but some examples are there who have embedded cyber or information security in the early stages of their platform development. One of them is Monzo. They have included cybersecurity from the initiation phase. That's including automated penetration testing and periodic security drills, and then performing regular patching and updating. So definitely, again, circling back, the earlier we include cybersecurity in the process, the better it will be. And we have seen, I have seen personally, like 7 out of 10 organizations, if not more, they do not consider cybersecurity as as part of the initial product development phase. And then later on, they will have to add more cost and complexity to embed cybersecurity, because one way or another, they have to integrate cybersecurity in their platform. Otherwise, customers, customer trust will be reduced, and that's what I've seen. For example, in one of the clients, literally like 3 months ago, there was a mandate that the organization, the third-party providers, they should have certain cybersecurity controls in place. Their product, their platform should be secure enough, because we are bringing their product in the environment that can, if it's not secure enough, it can increase the attack surface of the organization. So that's why we always do due diligence that their platform is secure enough. Again, if and that's the common practice. If if the platform is not secure by the fintechs or startups, then then they will end up losing customers. They will end up losing trust from the market, which means less business or bad reputation, if that makes sense.
Yeah, Steve.
So yeah, I would say that I have seen this quite recently, and I think that we should also mention here that we talked about cybersecurity, but we need to also mention that cybersecurity now embeds itself in your AI tools and your AI processes that as a startup organization you will be using on a daily basis. So we need to start to think about those good practices, and Furkan mentioned Monzo Bank, etc., that start to think of cybersecurity risk, but also AI risk and actual governance. So organizations such as our own organization, Central, we offer a complimentary health check, which will cover cybersecurity basics and AI enablement and AI security. So really, those organizations that are successful now are those that are fusing together the basis of cyber, but also considering the AI tools that they have in place and any particular risks that they bring as well.
Great. Peter, to finish us off.
Yeah, okay. I guess I've got 2 points. I think really smart startups, and I think Monzo was one of them, use security as a trust builder, right? It's part of their commitment to their clients that they are actually in it for the long haul for their clients. And in general, customers and investors trust companies that take security seriously. I think if you're able to talk seriously with those people about what you're doing and why you're doing it, it's yet another arrow in your quiver to build your brand as a serious player. It's not just about avoiding risk, although I'm a security expert and I'm really risk focused. But it's not just about risk; it's about competitive advantage. If you can differentiate yourselves from your competitors who seem loosey-goosey, it'll make it easier to sell. It'll mean that when there's a risk that a client might leave, they're more likely to stay with you. So there are two sides to this. I guess the last point, I'm going to be on my hobby horse again. Successful startups who do security really well, they keep it simple. They keep it so simple. They're not chasing buzzwords. They're being practical. So you can chase buzzwords with when you're listening to vendors and they're talking about AI security tooling and platforms. And no, what Stephen was saying is totally on the money. You're using these tools. What is the simplest, easiest way that you can make sure that information doesn't leak, that you're not actually getting incorrect information, that your system's not being compromised? These are the fundamental questions to be asking. And in general, following the security basics that Furkan has been talking about as well, MFA, basic configuration management, access control, having a response plan. One startup that I helped found their security program is now a publicly listed company worth 50 billion euros. It's a business called Adyen. It's one of the world's larger payment enterprises. It's a global bank. It's a bank in the UK, US, Europe, banking licenses or something similar in about 20 other markets. We focused on radical simplicity as the key. What is the simplest, cheapest, fastest thing we can do to drive down this risk? Not chasing expensive tools and vendor promises, keeping it simple. And they're still asking that question today. The team that I founded there still asks that question today, and they have an incredibly good reputation with their regulators, customers, and the market at large. they didn't overcomplicate things. And this is, I think, don't be tricked into thinking that everything has to be super complicated. Do the smartest, simplest things to drive down your risk, and they'll often be relatively cost effective as well.
Excellent, guys. That's a wrap. That's all the questions we've been through. Hopefully, those people who have listened have had some real actionable takeaways from that. I think it was really insightful. So I appreciate all of your time. A couple of things to finish off on. So we have a free assessment that I will link in the comments section below. It will basically help you to uncover some hidden risks when it comes to your cybersecurity. Once you've filled out that assessment, I think it's about 25, 30 questions long. We'll arrange for one of the team to jump on a call with you, just kind of walk you through the report. I will also put links to the panel today. So if you wanted to connect with them directly and ask them questions, you can do so. So hope everybody enjoyed it. Gentlemen, again, thank you for your time, and hopefully we can do this again soon.